as I tried to focus on Lucas. He was so excited, running from one side to the other, his laughter echoing like a melody that made me forget, even if for a moment, the worries that weighed on my shoulders. But the truth was, behind that smile, I carried a silent desperation. The bills were piling up, and the absence of my husband, who had tragically left, had left an immense void and burden in my life. "Look, Mommy. A squirrel!" Lucas exclaimed, pointing to a small animal that was moving quickly among the trees. The sparkle in his eyes reminded me of the joy we used to share, and my heart sank as I realized how much I wished things were different. While other mothers played with their children, I felt isolated, like an observer in a scene that didn't include me. "Yes, honey, it's a squirrel," I replied, trying to hide the sadness in my voice. Lucas's smile was contagious, but the reality of debt and loneliness was pulling me down, like an anchor at the bottom of the sea. Suddenly, I saw Lucas walking away, attracted by a group of children playing on a swing. My maternal instinct kicked in. "Lucas! Don't stray too far!" I shouted, but he was already too far away. As I got up to go after him, a feeling of anxiety enveloped me. What would I do if something happened? I ran after him, but the ground beneath my feet felt slippery. An instant later, I lost my balance and fell to my knees, pain radiating up my leg. "There!" I screamed, as frustration and shame mixed together. What was I doing? It was a simple trip to the park, but I felt like I was fighting an entire world. At this moment, a man quickly approached. "Are you well?" he asked, his voice low and worried. I looked up, surprised by his presence. He was a stranger, but his eyes were kind. "Let me help you." I'm fine, I just slipped," I replied, trying to get up on my own, but he was already reaching out his hand. I reluctantly accepted, and he pulled me up with a firm but gentle movement. "You don't look good," he commented, noticing the look of pain and concern on my face. "What happened?" "It's just a hard day," I murmured, looking at Lucas, who was now engrossed in a game with other children, a smile on his face. "I'm just trying to distract you." "You're a brave mother," he said, his encouraging tone surprising me. "What is your name?" "Sarah," I replied, feeling a strange connection to the man. "And this is Lucas." "Nice to meet you, Sarah." "I'm David." He smiled, and the warmth in his gaze made me relax a little. "If you don't mind, I can offer help. I know how hard it is to be a mother and deal with all of this." "Thanks, but I don't really need help," I said hesitantly. Distrust was a shadow in my mind. I'm just going through a rough patch." "I understand. We've all been there. But if you change your mind, I'm here." He looked at Lucas, who was now running back towards us. "And if you need something else, like a job that fits into your schedule, I can help with that too." My emotions were on a roller coaster. The idea of a job was tempting, but distrust also prevented me from accepting the offer so easily. "I don't know if I can accept this." "No need to worry. I'm here to help, and there's nothing wrong with accepting a helping hand," David insisted, his gaze sincere and welcoming. Sometimes people can be better than we imagine. Watching Lucas run towards us, my heart sank again. The last thing I wanted was to risk his safety. But at the same time, the idea of having someone who cared, even if it was a stranger, offered me a spark of hope. Maybe I can think about it," I replied, the hesitation still present in my voice. "Great. I'll be here if you need me." "Remember, you're not alone," David said, smiling again before walking away, leaving a strange feeling of comfort and concern at the same time. As I watched Lucas smile and play, I realized that even in the midst of despair, a small act of kindness could start to change everything. However, doubt about David and his intentions still lingered in my mind. What was really behind that offer? Sitting at a table in the cafe, I observed the steaming cups around me, the aroma of coffee mixing with the sweet smell of fresh cakes. David stood in front of me, looking at me with an expression that conveyed understanding and empathy. I didn't know whether I should feel relieved to find someone willing to listen to my story or whether I should be alert. But that morning, the need to vent seemed stronger. I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay the bills this month, I began, my voice shaking. Without Lucas, I don't know what I would do. My husband's death was such a strong blow. David leaned forward, his eyes fixed on mine, as if he really wanted to understand. I'm sorry for your loss, Sarah. I can't imagine what you are going through. It must be very difficult, he said, his voice soft and welcoming. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears. The reality of my situation hit me like a wave. Sometimes I feel like I'm sinking. The rent, Lucas' expenses, everything seems like an unbearable burden. It feels like I'll never get out of this, I confessed, vulnerability shining through in every word. David shook his head, as if he understood every pain I felt. You are stronger than you think, Sarah. And you don't have to do it alone. I want you to know that I'm here to help. I hesitated. What he said was kind, but I was cautious. Life has taught me to distrust strangers, especially those who appear out of nowhere, offering help. What do you have in mind? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. David smiled, a smile that seemed genuine. I'm starting my own business and, if you want, I can offer you an opportunity. Something that fits into your routine and still allows you to be with your child. My hopes began to rise, but caution was still present. Like what? I asked, seeking more clarity. Something simple, actually. It's nothing complicated. You could work from home, flexible hours. And I would be there to guide you, he explained, gesturing enthusiastically. I looked at him, trying to read his intentions. There was something comforting in the way he spoke, but there was also a small echo of warning in my mind. And it won't cost me anything? I asked, a little suspicious. Just a little of your time and dedication. But the return can be much greater than you imagine, he responded with a confidence that left me intrigued. The idea of having a chance to change my life, to take Lucas out of the financial stress we were experiencing, was tempting. But the fear of committing to something unknown also consumed me. I need to think, David. This is an important decision for me and Lucas, I said, trying to be firm. Of course, I understand perfectly. I don't want you to feel pressured. Just know that I'm here, and you can count on me, he replied, his tone reassuring. At that moment, something inside me began to change. Hope, although cautious, began to blossom. It could be the chance he needed so much. But a small voice still whispered in my ear to be careful. The conversation continued, and as we talked about the daily routine, about Lucas and his antics, I allowed myself to relax a little more. David seemed genuine, and his words were like a balm to my weary soul. You really care about people, don't you? I asked, trying to better understand who he was. Yes, I've always believed that kindness can make a difference in someone's life. That's why I'm here, he replied, a twinkle in his eye. I remained silent, absorbing his words. What he said seemed true, but doubt still lingered in my mind. I didn't know if I was ready to completely open up to him, but at the same time, a part of me longed for that connection. Thanks for listening, David. I really appreciate it, I said, feeling a rush of gratitude. Always. And remember, you are not alone. I will be by your side, no matter what you decide, he said, and I wondered if, in fact, he could be the light at the end of the tunnel that I needed so much. But as we left the cafe, a shadow of doubt still followed me, and I knew I would need to decide carefully about the help he was offering. The night was cold and the wind blew with an intensity that made me regret not having put on a warmer coat. As I watched my cell phone screen, my heart sank when David's call appeared. He was asking to meet at a cafe, and I hesitated for a moment. What did he want to discuss? I was already so tired of everything, but at the same time, I needed to hear what he had to say. The hope that he could offer a solution to my financial problems still gripped me. "Lucas, stay here on the couch while I go there quickly," I told him, trying to hide the anxiety in my voice. "But Mom, I want to go too," he replied, with big, expectant eyes. "I know, love, but it's an adult conversation. I promise it will be quick." I made a little face and he ended up agreeing, even with a small pout on his lips. When he arrived at the cafe, David was sitting at a table in the back, with an expression he couldn't read. He smiled when he saw me, but something in his gaze made me uncomfortable. As I approached, he gestured for me to sit down. "Sarah, I'm glad you came," he said, with a soft tone of voice. "I wanted to talk about a new project that could be very good for you." "A new project?" I asked, trying to keep the curiosity in my voice, but a wave of distrust began to form in me. "What type of project?" He leaned forward, as if he were about to share a secret. "A sales scheme, focused on beauty and well-being products. I'm putting together a team and I think you would be an amazing addition." He smiled confidently, but the intensity of his gaze made me feel chills. "And what exactly would I have to do?" I questioned, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "Sell the products, of course. And you can manage your own schedule, which is perfect for you and Lucas. Furthermore, the commission is very good." "David, I hesitated. I don't know if that's right." "Sarah, think about it. This could be your chance to give Lucas the life you always wanted," he insisted, with an almost persuasive tone of voice. "I need to think," I replied, feeling a growing pressure in my chest. It wasn't just the proposal that made me nervous, but the feeling that there was something more behind it. Something I couldn't identify. He seemed to sense my hesitation, and for a moment his smile faded. "Don't think I'm trying to pressure you," he began, but his voice had a threatening tone that made me hold my breath. "Just remember that you are in a delicate situation. It wouldn't be good for you if something went wrong, would it?" I felt butterflies in my stomach. What was he insinuating? What did he know about me? I stood up abruptly, my heart racing. "David, I don't want to get involved with this." My voice was firm, but I felt insecurity growing. "Sarah, you don't understand. I know everything about your life. About your difficulties," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, now terrified. "Just that I could easily ruin your reputation if I wanted to. People are always looking for a scandal, aren't they? A dead husband, a struggling single mother." His voice was as cold as the wind outside. I felt as if the ground had opened beneath my feet. Was he threatening me? Was that what he was doing? I backed away slowly, trying to stay calm, but my mind was in a whirlwind. "You can't do that," I said, almost in a whisper. "Oh, but I can. And, believe me, it would be very easy." He leaned back in his chair, seeming pleased to see my panic. "You're wrong to underestimate me, David," I said, although uncertainty was bubbling inside me. "I'm not easy prey." He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a laugh that echoed in my mind, leaving me with a feeling of vulnerability. "Let's see how far you go with this, Sarah," he said, getting up and walking away, while I stood frozen, feeling like the night was about to become a nightmare. That night, the darkness felt thicker, as if the entire world was weighing on my shoulders. I walked along the illuminated sidewalks, but the brightness of the lamps could not dispel the shadow that formed in my heart. Lucas was at home, lying in bed, with a fever that wouldn't go away. The thought of taking him to the doctor made me feel a lump in my throat. I didn't have a penny for it, and the memory of David's offer echoed in my mind. "He can help, Sarah," said an internal voice, while another replied, "And at what cost?" "You can't do this, Sarah," I muttered to myself, feeling the pressure of a moral dilemma. The thought of returning to David made me feel sick, but my son's health was the priority. I knew I was in a critical situation, but the idea of humiliating myself in front of him again was unbearable. When I finally got home, the silence was deafening. Lucas was so still, so pale in the soft lamplight. I sat next to his bed, stroking his hair, as worry built up in my mind. "I'm sorry, my love," I whispered, "I can't help you." The phone rang unexpectedly, breaking the silence. My heart raced. It was David. Panic took over me, but before I could hang up, his voice echoed on the other end of the line. "Sarah, are you okay? I noticed we haven't been talking. Aren't you feeling well?" The concern in his voice sounded genuine, but I knew I couldn't let myself be fooled again. "I'm busy, David. I can't talk right now," I replied, trying to remain calm. "I heard your son isn't well. Do you need help?" "I can help you with whatever you need," he insisted, and I could imagine his smile, that smile that had once seemed welcoming but now gave me goosebumps. "No, thank you. I'll manage," I replied, trying to sound firm. "Sarah, don't be proud. You know I can help you. I've done this before. Just tell me what you need," he said, his voice becoming more insistent. "David, I don't want your help. Please leave me alone," I screamed, feeling anger and despair mix into an emotional storm. He was cornering me, and I didn't know how to escape. "Do you really think you can get rid of me that easily? I know everything about you, Sarah." "Everything," he replied, his voice now a threatening whisper. "I don't want to hurt you, but you know I can make your life hell." Threats. That's what he was doing. A part of me wanted to hang up and never speak to him again, but another part of me was terrified of what he might do. What did he know? "Why are you doing this, David?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you're special to me, Sarah. I've always been here. And if you don't accept my help, well, you might remember me in a way you don't want to," he replied, a tone of coldness in his voice that made me feel cold. I hung up, my heart beating wildly. I needed a plan, but what could I do? My mind was in turmoil, and I didn't know where to go. The idea of seeking help from friends or family seemed impossible. Everyone was busy with their own lives, and I didn't want to be a burden. When I looked at Lucas, who was sleeping peacefully, a new feeling of determination came over me. I couldn't let David win. Not for me, but for him. Only with the strength of a mother's love could I face any challenge. I took a deep breath and, even with a heavy heart, I decided I needed to confront him. No longer as a victim, but as a mother willing to protect her son at any cost. My desperation was pushing me down a path that I knew wouldn't be easy, but Lucas's life depended on it. I couldn't let David continue manipulating my life. It was time to act. Determined to change my life, I couldn't ignore the growing feeling that David was a dangerous man. What had started as a kind gesture had turned into a nightmare, and I knew I needed to know more about him. With my heart racing, I began to investigate. My friend Carlos, who has always had a knack for discovering things, offered to help me. "Sarah, you can't sit still. I'm going to use my connections to find out who this David really is," he said, with a serious look. I thanked Carlos, but with each passing day, the anxiety only increased. I not only wanted to know who David was, but I needed to understand if he could actually harm me. Sometimes I would catch myself looking at Lucas, sleeping peacefully in his crib, and fear would paralyze me. How could I let something happen to him because of me? After a few nights of research and phone calls, Carlos brought me some alarming information. He arrived at my house one night, looking worried. "Sarah, you won't believe what I found. David is involved in a fraud and money laundering scheme. He has several lawsuits under his belt." My stomach turned. How can he be like this? He seemed so kind at first. Sometimes people aren't what they say they are. And you have to be careful. We can't let this go. Those words kept ringing in my head. I needed a plan. With Carlos' help, I decided that the best way to protect myself and Lucas was to collect evidence about David's illegal activities. He knew that what he had discovered could not remain silent. "Let's take it slow," Carlos suggested as we sat in his living room. "We need hard evidence. You can use your cell phone to record some conversations or take photos of any suspicious activity." The idea of confronting him directly made me nervous. But at the same time, adrenaline coursed through my veins. I was no longer the desperate young mother, but a woman determined to change her life and protect her son. In the days that followed, I began to observe David closely. I went to places he frequented and asked discreet questions. Every time he approached, a feeling of alertness came over me. On one of these occasions, while he was talking about a new business, I decided to record the conversation. "You're going to love this new opportunity, Sarah. It's an easy way to make money," he said, with that smile that now seemed sinister to me. "David, I'm not sure about this." "I need to think more," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thinking? What else do you need?" "You know you need money, and this is your chance," he insisted, the tension in his voice increasing. That night, I confessed to Carlos what I had done. I recorded our conversation. "He's trying to talk me into something I don't understand." Carlos smiled, satisfied. "That is great. Now we have something that can be used. We just need a little more evidence and then we can take everything to the police." With my heart racing, I went to sleep, but I couldn't rest. The idea of confronting David seemed more and more imminent. He couldn't continue to manipulate my life and my son's life. I needed to be strong. Finally, the day before I met with David again, I started to feel confident. I had a collection of evidence that, if all went well, would expose his true nature. I was determined to end this cycle of fear and uncertainty. "What are you going to do if he tries to intimidate you?" Carlos asked, as we reviewed the files he had collected. "I will stand my ground. He can't control me anymore. I'm stronger than he thinks." That morning, something inside me changed. I was no longer the woman who accepted help from a stranger without question. I was a protective mother, willing to face anyone necessary. And with that, I knew I was about to take a decisive step in my life. Adrenaline pumped through my veins as I walked towards the police station, the evidence I had collected securely tucked away in a folder under my arm. Deciding to take the truth about David to the authorities was the bravest and most terrifying thing I have ever done. The memories of the afternoons when he seduced me with promises of a better life still echoed in my mind, but now it was time to face reality. Upon entering the police station, I sat in a hard, cold chair, watching the police officers go about their business. My heart was beating so fast I was sure everyone in the room could hear it. When one of the police officers approached, I made a point of introducing myself. "My name is Sarah. I have information about a man named David, and he is involved in illegal activities." The policeman, a burly man with a skeptical expression, crossed his arms. "What do you know about him?" I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. "He is manipulating people, including me. He offered me a job which turned out to be a sales scam. And I discovered that he is involved in something much more serious." The officer motioned for me to follow him into an interrogation room. With each step, insecurity grew inside me, but the determination to protect my son, Lucas, and the truth that needed to be revealed was stronger. As I sat down at the table, I placed the folder in front of him. "Here is the evidence. Messages, documents, everything." He threatened me, and I don't know how far this can go. The officer examined the contents, his eyes widening as he flipped through the pages. "You did a good job, Sarah. This may be enough to open an investigation. But what if he finds out it was me? He will not hesitate to take revenge," I said, voice shaking with fear. "Don't worry. We will protect you," he assured, but I couldn't feel completely safe. The idea that David could be watching from afar filled me with dread. After a few days of tension and uncertainty, I received the news that would change my life forever. David was arrested. The police officer who helped me called to tell me, "Sarah, we need you to come here. We have information about David that you need to know." The heart raced again. What else could he have done? As soon as I arrived at the police station, the police officer led me to a room where he was sitting, with an expression that mixed anger and contempt. "David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What did you do?" He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Do you really think you could take me down that easily, Sarah? You don't know anything about me or what I'm capable of." "I know enough. You were manipulating my life for money and revenge," I responded, feeling anger bubble up. "You are a stranger who presented himself as a friend, but it was all a sham." "You're stronger than I thought," he admitted, but there was a hint of arrogance in his words. "But don't you know that I'm related to your husband? He and I had our own unfinished business, and you, my dear, have become a pawn in my game." Those words hit me like a punch in the gut. A relative? How could he be a relative? "You are lying." I screamed, but a part of me started to believe in the possibility. "You didn't do your research, did you? The truth is, I'm here to finish what your husband left unfinished. And you, Sarah, were the key I needed," he said, a dark smile on his lips. Despair took over me, but so did anger. "You won't be able to control me. I'm stronger than you think." After David's arrest, my life slowly began to stabilize. I got a new job at a clothing store, a comfortable place where I could work while taking care of Lucas. With the support of my friends and family, I finally found a new purpose. As I watched my son play in the park, surrounded by other children, a smile formed on my face. The kindness still existed, and I had learned that even strangers could be a light in the darkness, but that the true strength was within me. Life had taught me that the most unexpected twists and turns can come when you least expect it, and that the truth, no matter how painful it may be, always prevails.